I was mute there for a sec. Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the Winners and Losers podcast of the week. The week that is the last Winners and Losers of the podcast of the week of this season. Normally Gav is in the middle here, generally policing a chat between me and Ray. That's what it's felt like for the last 3 or 4 weeks. But Gav's decided to have a night off. His throat's in bits from drinking and cheering and talking. So instead, I'm taking over the hosting duties. I'm stepping back into an old role from many years, and we're going to have a chat tonight. I've got Pete on live from La Prisión de la Santa Vita in Barcelona, where he's saving time in an open prison, as you can see with the bars in the background. His missus has sent him off for not doing the dishes, and of course we have Ray joining us from the kitchen. It's the only place where there's a decent bit of internet in Ray's house.
Absolutely.
And Ray, we are going to do a live in person podcast over the summer. Just me and you. I'm going to nip around your house, so you can nip around to my house. We'll do it. We'll sit down and we can remove all these boxes and have a bit of real peace to keep on. Right, lads, it is the winners and losers. There's so much to do. There's so much to talk about. There's only really 4 things dominating it. So I think that the topics are going to be pretty self-evident in terms of what we're going to go through tonight. First of all, I just want to say hello to everyone in the comments. It so keeps me entertained as go along. After watching the game on Saturday night, I didn't know what way the comments would go, but I think the parade, and we'll probably get onto it at some point, has really salvaged a lot of the disappointment and restored the hope that's needed. And hope is a big and strong word tonight. I know we're going to be talking about some tough things that goes on. A lot of it probably won't be much to do with the match, but it is what it is, and we will start. So on with the first. What way do you want to go? Ray, do you want to go winners or losers first?
Can't even remember what I remember what I put forward. Let's go. Let's go with winners. Let's start this on a sort of a positive note, because I know we'll get into all of the not so positive stuff, and we'll have a lot to cover. But let's just start and be gracious losers, shall we? And my winners, I guess, are Real Madrid, because look, they did a job on the pitch on Saturday night amidst everything else that was going on. Carlo Ancelotti turned up, his team turned up with a clear game plan, and they were patient, they were disciplined, they were organised, they weathered that initial storm that we had. Obviously, they had an outstanding goalkeeper on the night. They sort of, in some ways, I think they took some of the impetus away from us just before half time there, with the kind of, the sort of calamitous goal that didn't know whether it was going to stand, didn't know if it was going to stand for so long. I mean, how long did that VAR decision take, by the way? It was absolutely agonising. I was in the fan park, and people were just looking around at each other like, what's going to happen here? Everyone seemed convinced that it was going to stand, and actually probably the biggest cheer of the night was when the goal was disallowed. But I think that set them in a different mindset for the second half. That hang on, Liverpool are potentially vulnerable to might say 2 more attacks, and they absolutely picked us off. They did a job on us. They became European champions for the 14th time. And to be fair to them, I was speaking with people before the game, and I was saying, the thing I feared the most was the fact that it felt like their name was written on the cup because of, what they'd done in the previous rounds, PSG, Chelsea, Man City, all the mad stuff that had happened. So you've got to tip your cap to them and say, the winners are Real Madrid at the end of the day.
Pete.
Yes, bro.
You happy to go along? Are you happy to go along with that? The idea just shows that you either agree or disagree with Ray. I know you have been on once before, but I just had to explain this again. I'm not meant to come and say, give me your opinion. I said, Pete, that's meant to be your cue up to start talking back. So, Gav, cut that there and we'll start again, okay?
No, I do get it. I do get it, as you know. It's not that I disagree with Ray, but people are talking about master classes from Ancelotti, which is rubbish. Now, Ray didn't say that, obviously. But for me, it's a case of two things. Bad finishing. I mean, we had 40 in the first half. We had 40 just dominant minutes and 5 calamitous minutes, which may have given them. Yeah, I agree with Ray to a certain extent. May have given them the impetus to say, well, perhaps they're not at it at the back. But we absolutely battered them. If we'd have reckoned, this is going to sound ridiculous. Mohammed Salah's not on form, but I just think if we had another recognised finisher, maybe if Mane's chance goes in, the one that, the miraculous goalkeeping save from Courtois onto the post, if that goes in, but I think we had 24 shots on goal throughout the whole game, and it was just panic. Is the worst I've ever seen us finishing wise, to be quite honest with you. It was just one of those nights. Thibaut Courtois was absolutely. I mean, Phil, you're the most qualified here. You and Davo was not here, to talk about how inspired Thibaut Courtois was. He was absolutely outstanding. But Liverpool were outstanding. We made Real Madrid look like Burnley. They were looking to go long, nice and early. The only outlet was the lad that scored the goal. It was his only shot on target. It was his only shot on goal. It was his only shot. I don't want to sound bitter, but I am. Don't like to lose. I'm a bad loser. But to be quite honest with you, you play that game 10 times, you win it 9. And that was the one time we didn't win it. My first instinct at the end of that game was, and my brother-in-law was sitting beside me, how can we lose to that shower of shites? They are absolutely brutal. Now, don't get me wrong, Luka Modric's a lovely player, but only because he can find feet in his own half. That was what he did for 90 minutes. He just found feet in his own half, which doesn't make you a world-class player. For me, finishing really let us down. Really let us down.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I'm sort of... I don't know. Our first half is impressive, right? And it's impressive for many reasons, because we have a hyper press and there's things going on, but Diaz never turns up in that game. And I think the biggest problem we had was that if you go back and watch the game, nearly all our attack has to be focused down Trent, Hendo, Salah's side across both until Jota comes on for us in the second half. It's all focused down that side, right? And it almost becomes easier to slow down and stop in terms of what's going on. Here's one of the prison guards heading off in the background.
The prison guard.
What a backdrop.
But then I kept going back to it, and I was thinking to myself, right, you look at the first half. There's enough half chances to be made that typically one of them comes off in a better vein. I don't even think we need a better finish or something. I just think for everything that went on. So when talking about this game, I kept saying, right, this was, I call it the 66% game. Not 1 in 10. I think if you play it 1 in 3 times, 2 and 3 times we win that match. 1 in 3 we lose. Right. That's why it was much more of a lottery than normal. And I felt, unlike 2018 when we lost them, where they were definitely the favourites to win that night, they were very much the underdogs. Ancelotti had used all his knowledge he's built up managing Napoli and Everton against Klopp, where he knew that he could do us once. Right? If you think about the Napoli games and you think about Everton, he knows he can do us once, because he seems to have an idea of how to trump Klopp on a one-off occasion, but not if he has to play him 3 or 4 times in the season, he's not going to get the better of him across a series of games. So this is ideally set up for Carlo. He has a better set of players than he had at Everton, a better set of players he had at Napoli, and even still, their game plan was very much about staying in that game for 60, 70 minutes and hoping they got the goal. And that's exactly what they did. They executed what it was, but they had to rely on an incredible effort but not just Courtois, but their defence as well. Keith mentioned it last night on the Fatback 4 about Carvajal. He hasn't been particularly good all season for Real Madrid, and he was exceptional against. Like, he basically snuffed out Diaz. He only starts to really come under pressure when Jota came on, and at that, Jota is not the striker that's banging form up until February. He's the striker that's slightly drifted off form, if you know what I mean. A bit like Salah's drifted off form. And Mane had been keeping us, it had become our focal point in terms of goals towards the end of the season. One thing I said to Steve on Saturday when we were sitting there, I said to Steve, I said, look what's happened. We've basically played about 5 games too many in this, right? And the Madrid was basically the culmination of this. Look, we I know we got the win against Wolves, but that was clawing and scraping our way to the win. And we couldn't get... Yeah, and we couldn't get that goal when we needed it, which was when City were behind or drawing against Villa. We couldn't get that goal to turn up and ratchet up the pressure. And I just felt, if you looked at the team, I would have loved to have binned off the FA Cup to have won either the league or the Champions League. My greatest regret in this whole thing will be that. Ultimately will be that. You know what I mean? And that's not the slight on the team or slight on how it was. I just couldn't, like, again, very focused, wily, campaigned Madrid side, and I felt this team, our team, was potentially 20% down on what we would have been able to do maybe in December or January or February when we started this run going. And I never felt we turned the screw. You know, in the second half, when they sort of came a bit more against us, we never seemed to have that energy level to go up. We lose Thiago. I think there's a few question marks, right? I think this brings up a few question marks for us about where we can improve. That doesn't mean that we're not good as it is. It's just where we can improve in the squad that's there. And I think, yeah, look, it's fair play to Madrid. They got their game plan right. Carlo got his game plan right. It was his one-off game against Klopp. He got it bang on the money. Rode their luck. Took the goal, and the only thing I will say, and I agree with you, the VAR goal should have been given.
Yeah,
and the goal they scored shouldn't have been given, because the one angle shows Benzema offside as the ball is played across and touches the ball away from the foot of Kanate. I think it is. It's a very faint touch, but it's enough to lift it over Kanate's foot and onto Vinicius Junior behind him. Right, so. Like, it's football. It balances itself out.
Yeah, there was actually some people around me who were saying this is going to get disallowed as well for offside. Yeah. So there was a thought of that. So you stand there waiting for maybe another review, and then it's kicked off and it sinks in that actually it is you are 1-0 down, and this isn't looking very good. Just back on your point, Phil, about the games and the legs and whatnot. I mean, we played all 63 games possible. We also, in both of the cup finals, we go to extra time in both of them. Like, only for the fact that game's over in 90 minutes. Like, you literally couldn't have played more minutes in a season if that game goes to extra time. It's an immense amount of games. It's probably a scenario we won't find ourselves in again for all. There's a lot of fight and talk about the quad next year and all that. I think that's just, that's just one of those things that people throw out there as something to hang the hat on. But it's highly unlikely it'll get to that stage again. Chances are we go out to one of the domestic cups, even if we do make a run to another European Cup final, like Klopp seems to kind of have set the stall out to make and get back to Istanbul. But it is what it is. This is why the quad was always kind of the
Everest.
Yeah, it was the Everest. Absolutely was the Everest. And it was also, by the way, I think why a lot of people wanted to stick it up there, just so that they could beat us down at the end of it when we fell either 1 trophy or 2 trophies short, and people have had a hell of a lot of fun. And that'll get onto that later about where people have gone with this, about sort of mocking Liverpool's supposed
failure. Not winning absolutely everything in football. You know what I mean? It's really, and I'm listen, like all of us, we're all gutted. We've got 2 trophies in the bag and we're gutted with it. That's the standards that this man and his team, his management staff has brought to this club, that we're sitting here with 2 trophies and, 90 minutes really arguably away from 2 sets of 90 minutes away from 4, and you're sitting there like we've done nothing. That's how high the standards are. We are a different level with this man. And to be honest, the
Right,
biggest
10
trophy
seconds.
the biggest
10
trophy for
seconds,
me
right.
we've won. Sorry, Ray,
5,
go ahead.
4. Last one.
Congratulations,
2, 1.
Real Madrid.
We're in showbiz, baby.
Baby. We're in showbiz, baby. Right, on to the next one. Pete, what are we going with your winners before we get on to the
Let's go winners.
true
My
chat? Yeah,
winners
go on.
are the two sets of winners. The travelling Liverpool supporters.
It's only one. You
And
can only have one. What are we going? You go for the travel cup. That's what we're going with, right? So there we go.
And the supporters who are waiting at home to do that amazing parade that you'll never see. And you know they've boiled so much piss out there amongst rival supporters. What are they celebrating? What are they celebrating? Listen, like I said, last weekend Manchester City won the Premier League, and fair play to them. And you know what I'm going to say. Like. I know so many people, and we all know so many people that just got the ferry or got on the plane to be in Liverpool, win, lose or draw, and the party's unbelievable. So, my real winners are the fans who have been, their name has been besmirched, and I'll talk about it. My losers besmirched by, and I don't want to be racist here, but I will be, by the usual cowardice.
Don't. Get on to the travelling cup. You don't need to go down that route yet, because we'll be talking about the losers in a second.
But I will be.
And honestly, we will be, right, and we'll give a fair hearing in terms of what it is, because I know I'm probably going to say something that people won't like, but I also think it's a very honest
but you'll
thing.
be right too. You'll be right. We talked about this.
So,
but the travelling lads, the lads who have travelled, unbelievable as usual. They travel in good spirits, and Dicko will tell you, he was there. I wasn't, unfortunately, but mixing with Madrid fans, arm in arm, because Madrid, from the times we've played them in recent years, know that the crack is with Liverpool supporters, so they were all mixed in. So I won't mention, what we'll mention in the loser section, but those lads who unfortunately, a government has picked on them this week and picked on the wrong people. They are the real winners for me this weekend. They've represented Liverpool, not the country, because they don't pretend to represent the country. They've gone and they've represented Liverpool, the club, the players, the season that we've had, the way that we've been for years and years. In fairness, the way that we've always been. They've gone to yet another city, and they've represented us the way we need to be represented. They should all be handed medals when they're on the way back through customs, to be honest with you. Couldn't be any more proud than the travelling Liverpool support. And you know what? At the end, you could see them all. Nobody left the stadium. Everybody clapping, for the trophy lift and that. Confronted by riot police, but still.
So Ray, you're fortunate enough. And I want to lead on from Pete's bit, right? We've said that the fans are amazing. We've had incredible scenes in Kiev in 2018. We had an incredible scenes, and we still see videos of that day out in Madrid before the final in 1920, right? You're there in Paris, right? Where does it rank? What was that like in comparison to what? Because it's so rare to get 3 Champions League finals for us as a team, to get 3 Champions League finals so close. And these are the first 3 Champions League finals in our memory that exist in the social media age. And I'll get onto that in a little bit later. But from this point of view, where for you sits this?
I didn't go to Kiev. I went to Madrid and I went to Paris, and neither occasion I had a ticket, and I was unsuccessful in ballots, and I accepted my position that I was going there to sample in the atmosphere, going to a European Cup final. And when I went to Madrid, didn't really have any expectations, or I'd not seen any. I didn't actually. I know there's Shevchenko Park, isn't there, where there's a kind of a gathering of fans. That's the fan park. And then Madrid, I had no kind of real expectations, and Madrid happens, and that fan park was just unbelievable. I mean, it was the greatest experience of my life, and I carried that through. I mean, I remember coming back and watching, taking the videos that I'd taken, watching them back for days on end afterwards. Obviously, the result goes our way, so that helps in terms of wanting to kind of reinforce that memory of being there when you get home. It was just an unbelievable experience. Although I have to say, and there's some certain parallels you can draw between French police and Spanish police. You know, there was moments there where the police had very, you know, you could sense heavy-handed tactics, and in fact, the bar that we end up in is almost closed down at one point. And to be fair, it's actually Steve-O who steps in and rescues the situation, because they were looking to close. You know, they were on a bit of a mission. You know, they didn't have a screen in Madrid, so they were on a bit of a mission, I think, to make sure that there was no flashpoints with English fans. When we were in a really kind of swish bar, which was on the threat of being closed down for no real reason at all, other than, you know, the Spanish police just seemed to take exception by how many Liverpool fans were in there getting ready to, you know, enjoy watching a football match. So I went to Paris, obviously, with those memories, and I was constantly, I suppose, drawing parallels, trying to kind of, oh, is this better? Is it worse? Is this, that, and the other, making comparisons. And the fan park, got out to the fan park. You know, we'd had a few drinks the night before, so we were a bit kind of, you know, heads weren't completely clear. We got to the fan park when things had started. I have to say, it was quite, you know, there was no signage, there was no way you really had to kind of fathom things for yourself. It was very confusing when we got out. We had a bite to eat and we got to the fan park, and it was very congested getting in. We got in, they were doing bag searches and whatnot, and we got in. And I have to say, the afternoon was, you know, the concert that was laid on, the Anfield Rap Boys up on the stage, you know, a few acts, DJ, young lad DJing who's having the absolute time of his life. And then obviously the culmination of it all was Jamie Webster then doing an hour set, 4:30 till 5:30. And that's when it was absolutely electric. 5:30 comes, there's a massive lull then. There's a massive lull and you've got to make a decision what you want to do for the game. They announce that they're going to show the game on the screen. That's a hell of a lot of time to kill. You know, people have got, you know, people have, you know, some people have had more drink than others. We took it steady. But there was a very firm instruction for fans at 5:30 to make the way to the grounds. And if you're there, I'm sure you are definitely making your way to the ground. We got out to the fan park and we did a bit of walking around, which actually came in handy after it all. And we sort of found the bar, had a drink, got back. And we watched the game there. I have to say, it was an enjoyable experience despite the result. But at the end of it, you know, one of the lads that I was with said, and, you know, you were always aware of the heavy French police presence just out on the other side of the fence. You could see them. You could see them kind of, when we left the first time, you could see they were gathering in great numbers. You know, one of the lads said, let's get out of here. This has the potential to turn ugly. And we just left straight away, not through sour grapes, not through any, just because you knew that the police were there on the other side, and if there was any sign of, you know, fans maybe a bit worse for drink, that, you know, they were going to step in and be potentially heavy-handed. And then obviously I see some videos afterwards where there's people. We were lucky, we were at the front, we knew that there was like an entrance that would open up for us, so we didn't walk all the way to the back. So I seen videos later on of people being tear gassed as they were leaving the fan park, which to me seemed it's just, I suppose in some ways, and it's sad saying it, if you felt there was inevitability about it, even though there was no trouble at that moment that we left, we just felt like there was the recipe there for it. And then, you know, we got home fine, we got the metro, and then you see all the videos and what's gone on, and it just makes me sad, to be honest with you.
But because we're going to come back to it, right? But like, right, taking your point, the scenes from the fan park before the game, right?
Oh, it was amazing.
The more I saw the scenes, the more I was convinced that with the vibe that was there, with the sounds that was there, with the singing, with the pyro, with the sense of unity and purpose within the fans, that this would be a team that cannot be undone, that they'll be driven along by this powerful vehicle, which is the Liverpool fan base when in full voice. It reminded me of when you think back to 13-14 and the bus welcomes, when they all started coming back into singing before the games. It takes you back to 18-19, it takes you back to 19-20 when we're in the league, and this crescendo and noise builds and builds towards the end. And it does drive the team on. And the biggest thing and the biggest regret that I have around this is due to what happens before the game and everything that goes on before the game, is that noise and that sound and that crescendo never makes the ground. We could tell it on the television feed. The Liverpool fans were as quiet as I've heard them in a long time at a match. They try to get going, but there was just that life, that soul had been ripped from them because of what went on before. And we lose those scenes and that joy that you guys were experiencing before the game because it was immense. When those shots that went back from the stage went all the way back with the amount of people, 80,000 people, I reckon, were there for this fan park.
Yeah, I could well believe it. It was unbelievable. The length of what the space that we had and we filled up was, when you went from the back to the front, it was unbelievable. 4 massive screens separated by huge gaps. Don't know what the length of it was, but it was unbelievable. And this is how, talk about traveling cop and everything. The 3 finals and the build-up of how big these pre-game events have got, I think, have put us on a different platform to any other fan base. And I think a lot of fan bases look on with a lot of jealousy. And from that jealousy stems a lot of negativity now. And at any point trying to kind of undermine and bring us back down. And to me, that's really sad. It really is, because what I seen there on just as I did in Madrid was an enormous amount of people having the time of their lives.
Yeah, I completely agree. And because it was so close to England, because so many fans could get over it, having spent an absolute fortune to get to Paris, like that's where this seemed to be the dream location for this type of final, and was leading up to that game, up to what happens, the breakdown of what happens. It has all the hallmarks of being one of the most memorable days and nights that Liverpool fan contingent we're going to have. Now, we haven't got onto it, but I think we'll round back on the fans, because I think I want to talk about the parade at the end, but we have to get onto the losers topics in a couple of seconds. But I will say one thing, and it is to echo Pete's point, right? Whatever happens, I hope the fans don't lose the sense that they've built, because they are a credit to the club. An absolute credit to the club, and that shouldn't be forgotten.
We're in showbiz, baby.
Mm-hmm. That's my moniker, my cue to move on to the next topic. So this is flying along tonight. It's very, very, very professional. I'm very impressed with myself here. Right, we're coming up now. The losers topics. I think it's only heading in one direction. We've been touching and bouncing around as we've been going on about it here, and both of you falls into one. So I think let's start. Pete, I think yours was to do with the absolute travesty of the handling and the smearing and the cover-up that's currently going on at the moment.
Can we just...
and then, Ray, I think it's worth... We won't even break these topics. We'll go straight into it. But yours is about the reaction, the rival fans' reactions. Not our fans' reactions, but the rival fans' reactions to what's going on, because that's absolutely disgusting at this moment of time. Go on, sorry. So take it away, Pete.
Listen, before I rant on, and it's anybody that's French... or that is a UEFA Swiss, aficionado in the comments, I apologise in advance for any seemingly racist comments that I'm going to make.
But there's no need to. There's no need to, because before you go down, I just want to, because I don't want to get Gav into trouble, right? And I don't want him having to jump in like a Dunphy soundbite, right? Because again, this is not about the people, right? This is about the response and the preparedness, right? Yeah. And I think we should keep it to that, because it's unfair. And
I will do, Phil. But let me tell you something. Listen, the whole foundation of it being in Paris. I mean, let's go all the way back. We all know the reasons why it wasn't in Russia, obviously, and none of us were shocked or surprised when UEFA chose Paris. But I'd be a little bit more cynical when it comes to our French friends. Now, I have nothing against the French authorities, but I do have, we all have one eye, and I certainly do have one eye on the way the French do things, to be quite honest with you. Live in close proximity to them, work with them. And it's this just lack of transparency, lack of accountability. And I'll be honest with you, just to give it the foundation, to give you an example of the type of, we won't even talk about the interior French minister, but the first default of French authority is always this, is the aesthetic. For example, when the Nazis, for example, in the late 1930s decided they were going to invade France, the only caveat, one of the main caveats for surrender, wasn't to protect the people, but that the Louvre would be protected, and that nothing that looked good and was pretty in France would be attacked, stolen, or damaged. That should tell you everything that you need to know about French mentality and about the way things are.
I think.
Hang on, let me finish. Let me finish.
Because that's madness.
No,
that's madness, right? Go on.
Let me finish.
Get on to the point.
I'll bring it back. Let me finish. I mean, Ray made a point about 5 minutes ago that they were going to close this swanky-looking bar that everybody was in for no reason at all. Like I can tell you why they were going to close it. Anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole. Maybe Phil, your instinct is right. We won't go down that rabbit hole. But let's talk about accountability for a minute. Let's talk about a French interior minister who obviously knows nothing about the game or sport, but his immediate panicking default is to wash his hands like Pontius Pilate and blame the dirty foreigners, which is what he did. Now, you don't even have to be blessed with the benefit of hindsight. You just have to look at what happened. I mean, you only have to look at stills. You only have to ask for first-hand accounts from both Real Madrid and Liverpool fans. There were thousands of local French people, and I don't care about the colours of the skin, jumping fences to get in. So the French panicked. So what did they do? They immediately needed to scapegoat somebody, and it's very easy. And what I find is disgusting is their immediate instinct was to, okay, this lot in red have a history going back several years ago of stuff that's already been dealt with. So what we will do is we will play on that prejudice, and we'll do what. There's a reason why 45% of French people voted for Le Pen in this election for president. It's for that, because it's very easy to appeal to their prejudices. And that's exactly what their interior minister did today. He appealed to the prejudice against foreign people and just said, listen, it's Liverpool fans. 40% of them turned up without a ticket. He reeled off all these statistics that made absolutely no sense and decided that he's going to click into the world that we live in now, the post-truth phenomenon world, and that's going to be his truth. Now, it won't be allowed to stand, but they'll debate it, and people that are voting a certain way in France will believe it, and that will be enough for France. The truth in 2022, Phil, doesn't matter. And that's what's so disgusting about what the French have done over the last 48 hours. They've taken the truth and they've went, that doesn't matter. It only matters that we get there first with our disinformation. And that's what will, if enough of that sticks, people will move on to the next controversy. And that's what makes them absolutely losers and disgusting, in my view.
You've got the kernel there, right? And the kernel of, and I'll let you jump in because I just want to throw this in. And it's the worst part about this. And it's the same thing happened after Hillsborough as well. Thank God nobody was seriously hurt in the scenes that ensued. Thank God there wasn't a tragedy, right? Because the Champions League final has had tragedies before. The European Cup finals had tragedies, and unfortunately, we were involved in it, right? You know, like the last time I saw a crowd so flat was sadly in the 1985 final. I remember watching it with my dad at the time at home and not understanding how a match could continue in terms of what was there, right? This was crazy times. I remember sitting watching Hillsborough unravel in front of us on the television and watching it in what was as close to real time. But we were seeing something else that was going on. It was a complete and utter farce of organisation outside of anything else. It wasn't. There was no ownership of the task. Whoever was responsible for what was going on didn't seem to have a clear handle on what was needed, and there seemed to be very simple solutions to the problem. There seemed to be sufficient stewards to handle the problem, and the organisational pieces that were in place didn't seem to be followed through in terms of having the multiple ticket checks to prevent these queues from happening and preventing these crushes from happening. And you don't have a modern stadium unless you have multiple points of access and multiple entry points that are normally manned that allow fans to flow freely in and out of the ground. There's no history of animosity between the two sets of fans. There never has been. So in that sense, it didn't need to have such a great big separation going on. It was. So when the queue started to emerge, whatever, there was solutions and there was safety valves that could have been pulled very quickly that would have prevented this situation from escalating in the way it did. The police response is a result of years of heavy-handed tactics against any type of crowd incident in France. We saw it in the World Cup. We've seen it, and sadly, the legacy of English fans, and I'm talking about English fans who followed their national team and continue to follow the national team. All club teams are getting tarnished with the same brush, whether people like it or not. That's just an output of what happens. It's not an excuse. It is what it is. And the worst part about this is that, again, same as 1989, the truth which gets out there is the truth that is managed by those who are trying to cover their arses, essentially, right? And if you look at what goes on and you look at what's happened, thankfully, there was reporters on scene to get there. But my biggest worry and my biggest concern is that the message has been relayed so many times about fake tickets, fans trying to jump gates, and fans arriving late to the game. It's been pushed so quickly and so fastly by both UEFA, the French Federation, and it's been pushed as the official line, and they've held press conferences and have got global coverage on it, right? That this stuff sticks. And of all the fan bases that should know that this stuff sticks, regardless of the truth behind it, we have suffered with this for the best part of 30 years. And this is the worst part and the most offensive part of what's just taken place. Because
bring on the Super League. Bring on the Super. Fuck UEFA.
It's harder in these instances to accept the failures. We see it. This is a political response to what was the failure of organisation, and the political response is always to pull down the gates, pull down the things, back your institution, back that you're right, and blame those on the outside and blame the simplest target, because the people are always the problem. The people are always the problem. It's never the problem of the institution or the organisation, and it's going to take a massive pan-European campaign for this truth to come out, because UEFA now have said they'll set up an independent investigation. This is UEFA. This is UEFA, who's controlled by the Qatari president, who's involved with PSG in Paris, in the Stade de France. Right? Mm-hmm. How can that be? That can't be seen to be ever independent, because no football body, UEFA or FIFA, has ever managed anything independent successfully without knowing what the outcome is that they're going to get at the end of the report. This is not a transparent organisation and never will be. But that, to me, I just wanted to park it there, because and Ray, I'm going to let you in now, because all I'm saying to you is that, and it's the saddest part, after suffering what we have with Hillsborough on a truth, again, we have this horrible, horrible, horrible truth that's been picked up by too many institutions and too many pieces so far. But as I said, thankfully, there's been nobody injured, nobody hurt. And when I say nobody hurt, there was nobody seriously hurt. Yeah, nobody seriously hurt. Sorry, nobody seriously hurt that we know of at this moment in time.
By good luck, I think, rather than by good judgment. In the end, on what you see. I mean, the crazy thing about all this, from a personal perspective, is that I almost feel like I was living in a parallel world in a way, because we were at the fan park. You were completely unaware. I didn't know anyone at the game who I was kind of in touch with or whatever. So you're completely unaware of the issues. The commentary that was on, the broadcast was Canal Plus, so it was all in French. We were looking at our watches and wondering why we weren't seeing teams and stuff like that, coming onto the pitch and whatnot. And then you seen like the camera go onto the board which gave the information, the misinformation. And okay, you kind of said, although it did seem a bit odd in the back of my mind, when you're in a fan park and people are told to leave at 5:30 and you've seen a mass exodus at half, it wasn't like, no one was going anywhere. So to think that, a lot of people who would have been going the game would have gone to fan park. So that bit did seem a bit strange even at the time. But the first indication around something stinking here is obviously the change in the story. Then, isn't it? It's the fans turn up late, then they are met with a whole heap of evidence of people, journalists, fans, people with no agendas, no access to crime with anyone, actually saying, well, we were there at 6 o'clock and we were still, 10 yards on, 30 yards on, the gates were closed. So they then get found out on that lie very quickly, because it's the myth is debunked by the closed gate situation, and clearly a scramble. I think I'm surmising the security aspect. Most of these are just kind of layman people, who are probably not paid an awful lot of money to stand at various checkpoints, quickly overwhelmed, feel a little bit insecure, maybe get in touch with their supervisor, and then it all spirals then because the police come in and take control and take completely different attitude. The gates are closed, so that's gone. They can't use that excuse anymore. So they bring out this absolutely ludicrous 30 to 40,000 fake tickets theory. And I'm sure there was a few fake tickets circulating. I mean, I spoke to someone before who had a ticket, and he actually made the comment to me that, and because he had actually had a conversation with someone around fake tickets. And apparently, which was amazing to think in this day and age, there didn't seem to be any of the usual kind of hologram security kind of, the things that were probably introduced 20 years ago. He did, he wasn't obviously going to pull his ticket out there and then, but he did actually make the comment that these tickets could potentially be forged, with the right resources, sort of thing. So I'm sure there was a few, but to peddle out 30 to 40,000 is just ludicrous, and to say it's on an industrial scale, it's just
very French, Dicko. It's very French.
It's
you need to understand. I mean, there are neighbours here in Spain, and it's always the way somebody asked in the comments, how has it been reported? And the Spanish are like, it's the French, isn't it? That's what they do. They blame whoever is on their fringes, whoever's living on the outskirts of their big cities, like in Marseille. They blame the North African communities, and whoever's arrived in the country over the last 48 hours, which is Liverpool and Madrid supporters. They blame it, and because there's a pre-existing prejudice against Liverpool supporters, they blame Liverpool supporters. This is what the French do. To what they do.
Yeah, and
I don't think it's
just back to then the scenes that you then playing back, on social media. You just become incredulous, seeing people who are trying to scan the tickets. And technology, we all know technology isn't perfect. Sometimes, we've all been at turnstiles when our tickets haven't scanned the first time, and we go and ask for some assistance, and then they're met with someone who just walks up, and pepper sprays them in the face. And it's like, what is actually going on here? It's just, it's just unbelievable to see. And, I made the comment before we come on. It's the first time in my life that I can, hand on heart say I'm just so glad that I didn't get a ticket. I wasn't successful in the ballot that I entered, because, listening to the stories of people going in the ground and coming out the ground. I mean, what sort of people had to experience going out sounds, equally horrific. Running the gauntlet, potentially being mugged. The police are so intent on all of their kind of, trying to stop this riot, which was never going to materialize, and then actually turning a blind eye or being nowhere to be seen when the real criminals are operating. It's mind-blowing.
Isn't it a bit mad though, right? The story that's being pandered, because the truth is that you have what appears to be in both UEFA and the organisation committee of the match in Paris and the authorities completely disorganised when it comes to this match. the flows of the flows of the supporters into the ground seem to be arseways for a start, right? When you look at what they've had to where they have to go to get into the match, and you look at where the gates available to them that they could have opened, the police seemed overwhelmed within seconds in terms of what's going on, and their only reaction, instead of trying to police the situation, is to drop immediately into crowd control techniques. Do you know what I mean? Like, drop into what would be protest techniques, as opposed to understanding that this isn't a protest. These are just people who want to get into the ground, which is literally 25 feet away from them. You know what I mean? They want to be not on this side of the fence. They want to be on this side of the fence, where there's loads of room for people to move around and get into their seats. Like, then you have UEFA, who had to move the final from Russia because of what went on, and moved it to Paris, and which seemed to be a logical step in terms of where the locations of the two teams and everything like that. But like, there is a lot to be said for stereotypes, and say, wouldn't German organisation in the Bayern Arena, in the Allianz Arena, made a lot more sense? Because like, this doesn't happen there. Do you know what I mean? Right? This doesn't happen in Germany. Because
the interior minister, you know, sort of preludes all of the lies on the basis that, well, actually, we were only given 4 months to organise this. Normally, we get years, and you know, so you know,
then refuse to do it, and give it.
Yeah,
to
exactly. If you don't think you can, but of course they want, you know, they want the publicity, they want the glamour of hosting a Champions League final. They've got a Rugby World Cup coming up next year, is it? Good luck to anyone who's planning.
Like I said, Ray, it's all about the aesthetic.
And then you've got the Olympics the following year, so you've got two big major sporting events happening, and you know they're obviously if they can't organise stuff, like you know, God help the people who are travelling to these events coming up.
But it seems to me like the main cause and root cause of actual trouble that went on around the ground seems to be the orchestrated campaigns by the local gangs around Saint-Denis. I think Thierry Henry himself, in terms of saying, you want to go to Paris, you don't want to go to Saint-Denis. Saint-Denis is not Paris. It's on the outskirts of Paris, and it's a downtrodden area, and there is known issues with just basically street hoodlums and stuff like that that's there, right? In terms of what it is. So it also appears that the initial reports of fans forcing their way in weren't fans at all. They were the local youths who just barged the gates and stuff like that, and created there's a whole, when you get into this, if there's an honest investigation into this, you're going to see that a number of things happens that causes the reaction and the reactions that go on. It seems to be that those kids and those people from the local areas barge the stadium, break the gates, and causes this lockdown of a few entry points. So it actually focuses the entry points into very few gates in comparison to what it was. There's definitely commonality with the Madrid fans that we weren't aware of, because there was a lot of Madrid fans in the ground when it actually came to kickoff time, as opposed to the Liverpool fans. But now there's videos of the Madrid fans coming out. Chiringuito was going on about it. They weren't talking about problems with the Liverpool fans. They're starting to show the same problems that the Madrid fans had, the same heavy-handed tactics by the Paris police. And there seems to be a lot coming out now in the Spanish media that they had similar experience, if not with the vast majority of their fan base that was there. So when it comes back to it, and I go back to what I said initially, right? The problem you have is when somebody comes out with a version of the truth that gets widely accepted as being factual. Because if you remember, the very first thing we all heard was that the fans were arriving late and couldn't get into the game. That's why I had to delay the kickoff. It had nothing to do with it. The fans were there. They just weren't able to get in. That's different to arriving late. Arriving late means that you're only wandering up. You're doing Croke Park on Jones's Road, and the kickoff's at 2:30, and all the lads are leaving the pubs at 27 minutes past 2, thinking that they get into the hill in time for the kickoff of the game. That's arriving late. This wasn't arriving late. So when everything gets twisted and everything gets turned, you'll see that there's a build-up. The same thing happens, sadly, when you go back to the Hillsborough and the events, and you look at all the reports that have come out, and they talk about the build-up of so many small things that leads to this overwhelming issue that you have, and this overwhelmingly bad managed crowd control techniques that goes in. And to think that here we are, having had so many tragedies, and not across various different sports and things, and even at this point in time, stuff like this can still happen. Stuff like this can still lead to scary incidents. You see kids crying. You see this reports of the muggings that's going on, and clearly an awful lot of this was to drive the conditions to allow these gangs to mug and rob people. Like when you look at what's going on, if you fire tear gas into a crowd of people, they're going to scarper. They're not going to just stand around and wait for the tear gas to clear and go through the pain. They're going to scarper, and in the scarper, the guys down were doing the pickpocketing and they're robbing and they're mugging, and you've seen high profile people with these. You've seen Jason McAteer's missus and son was involved in it. There's been other reports of journalists being done as well. There's been reports of you heard about Andy Robbo's friends not being able to get in because they were told they had fake tickets, even though they got tickets from the club. Imagine being given tickets from the club. Imagine, Ray, you got a ticket from Mo Salah and you go up to go and say, yeah, that's fakey. It's insane. The whole thing is insane. Right?
It is. And just on that about, you know, pickpockets and nudes and stuff like that, we did see a few, you know, they kind of stuck out, really, to be honest with you, in the fan park. You know, pretty much every Liverpool fan in that fan park had some kind of colours identifier, T-shirt, Liverpool shirt, a hat, something that you knew was a Liverpool fan, and then you'd see the occasional what we started kind of calling bogeys, because they stood out. The locals kind of stood out. They didn't know any of the songs. They didn't, you know, they weren't joining in the same way as that, and they were just there to try and, you know, pickpocket essentially, you know. And at one stage, you know, one of the lads who I was with actually tapped. You said, "Watch yourself there. Like, I think he's going to go for your pocket," you know. You know, there was opportunist behaviour going on, both from a, you know, robbing people, but also obviously trying to get into the biggest kind of event on you know, the hottest ticket in town. You know, trying to get into a stadium where people are literally paying thousands to get into. You know, that's a pretty big incentive to have a go. You know, if you're just kind of a local and you haven't even paid a penny to be there. You know what I mean? Got nothing better to do.
100%, and you like, there's not going to be a simple answer to this. Well, the simplest truth in this, and I use the word 100% in its correct function here. The simplest truth here is that yet again, sets of fans were criminally let down by the organisation tasked with putting on a safe event. It's that simple. It's, if you create the conditions, and I know I said it's a series of small things, but if you award a final to a city, even if it's at a last minute because of what goes on, and that city is incapable of hosting the final, or is incapable of putting the organisation pieces in place to host the final, then there is a burden of responsibility solely on the organisation who awards it. And they can lay the responsibility down to the other people who are involved, from the police to the organisation team behind the French FA who are tasked with putting it on in the Stade de France. So the only truth here is that fans should be able to go to a game. Fans should be able to get into a game safely. Fans should be able to get out of a game safely. And if the fans are behaving themselves, which thankfully, going back to our earlier point about how good the Liverpool fans were across that time, that those fans shouldn't have to worry about being kettled, tear gassed, and ran by the people who are there to protect them. People forget police in these things are there to protect the majority of safe fans. Okay? And this was two bodies of fans who weren't there for trouble, who weren't there for anything else. They were purely there to enjoy the spectacle of a Champions League. And ultimately, the Champions League was a lesser event because of the actions of UEFA and those tasked with organising this game. And all this final will be remembered for is this. It won't be remembered for what happened on the pitch. And if people don't believe me, when we think about Heysel all these years later, we don't remember it. The match is not remembered. The match is never remembered. When something like this happens, and I'm not equating what happened with Heysel, by the way. People lost their lives in Heysel, which was absolutely horrific, right? But when something takes place that's so big outside the ground that puts people's lives at risk and at safety, the game itself becomes completely secondary to what goes on. And ultimately, that's where this match will end up being. And it's a sad footnote for what was such a wondrous season and what was such a wondrous voyage to get to that final. And for those fans to get to that final. And I go back to Ray's point, to being part of that fan zone, that raucous celebration of that journey. So it's the saddest full stop in what was the end of Liverpool's Champions League journey this season. However, I want to go on to the next topic, and I think, Ray, it's your losers of the week because it flows on from this. I'll let you take it away because I'll probably get too cross trying to explain this one. This really fuels this really grinds my gears.
Yeah, it's the tribalism, isn't it? I mean, we and people mix it up with banter. Like, it's not banter. It's serious stuff. It's lies and cover-ups that can affect any fan base, really, if you think about it, and trying to take cheap shots and score points and bring up the likes of Heysel, at the very first earliest opportunity here. It's just ridiculous, and it's got to the point now where you see these comments, you whatever thread it is, and you see these comments, and the kind of fan base, the clubs that they're either they're on their Avi straight away, so or you just click on the bio and and no shame in saying what I see as the top offenders. They tend to be Chelsea, Spurs. I wouldn't even necessarily say United fans.
They don't go there.
Up at the top of that list. In fairness, to me, it's the London clubs which seem to be the worst offenders for me. And then that's where you're getting into kind of the usual stereotypes of bin dippers. This prejudice against Scousers that's existed, from whenever I've been going to football matches in the 80s all the way through, and all that, the social divides and, sort of, Tory versus sort of, people who, on the left and all that sort of stuff. So like but at the end of the day, it was kind of what the point I'm really trying to make is that it allows some of these lies and kind of ways escaping out of the truth to kind of like emerge and gain some ground. Like we obviously seen it with Hillsborough, and people just either are too stupid or refuse to educate themselves. What I would say is there's so much out there now that if people want to educate themselves and want to, read up on, journalists' experiences, Sky Sports is, take on this almost straight off the bat. I mean, why do then people think that then Sky Sports have got this pro-Liverpool agenda going on? It's completely, all they're trying to do is feed into their own prejudices and narratives that have existed around their own fan bases for years, and make some capital out of what was a really serious and dangerous situation. And it wasn't even limited to Liverpool fans. Some Real Madrid fans have had some really bad experiences coming out of that ground, and even that's all being swept under the carpet. Yeah, they're straight on the bandwagon. Oh, this doesn't happen to the Real Madrid fans. This doesn't happen. Do I see one of the things that strikes me, particularly about these fan bases that are quick to jump on Liverpool fans, and you've got a track record in this and history of this. Like, they're often fan bases where I see some videos of their fans when they're traveling Europe, clashing with other fans. I can't remember. I've been to numerous aways down the years, European aways down the years. And it's actually only the two recent finals where I've gone without tickets. I've never, in all my experience, come across Liverpool fans clashing with other fans. I know we've got the history of what happened in Heysel and all that sort of stuff. But all I'm saying is these people who they want to look a little bit closer to home before they start casting aspersions on what the modern day Liverpool travelling contingent are actually like, because they're not like any of the stereotypes that are being banded around. They're completely uneducated, and it's getting to the point now where it's really winding me up.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I completely agree with Dicko, to be honest. And I think a lot of things you need to take into account as well. And I'm not being funny. I'm not trying to be humorous about it, because none of this is funny. But I think Liverpool supporters way back in the day got a bad name because, to be fair, they were winning everything and they were one of the only sets of. I mean, in the 1970s and 80s, you didn't get to go to Europe unless you won the trophies. So Liverpool supporters were the only supporters that were travelling, and British football in general had a bad reputation. I'm not just saying it. I'm not making excuses, but I'm just saying that those are the facts. There were dark days for football, but there were dark days for socially. People had nothing, not just in people had nothing anywhere. And there was a lot of frustration. So you got your trip away. There's a lot of frustration taken out. Ray makes a very interesting point that it wasn't fan versus fan. A lot of the time it was fan versus authority figure. And again, I'm not making excuses, but I'm just saying that's how things were on a geopolitical kind of spectrum. But from my perspective, I have a lot of friends who are fans of different clubs, as you guys know. And I find the older lads know better. You get a few ringleaders amongst the older who fancy, the young lads. But these are all kids, Chelsea, saying the most nasty things. They're not educated. The unfortunate thing about Twitter and places like that is you don't see who's making the comments, and there's no accountability for it. People are just reaching for what's the worst thing I can say to this group of people. These people are scum. They're not worth 5 minutes of your time. But I will say, it does annoy me, Ray, as well. But you would think the way people thought Manchester United supporters travelled, Arsenal fans travelled, Chelsea. No, it was only Liverpool fans and England fans. And let me tell you, the worst reputation in world football was England supporters. And most of those guys were Millwall, West Ham, Chelsea supporters. Going out looking.
They were 80 to 90% made up of those kind of London clubs, with the poor reputation for their own
movies. Like for me, the business I'm in will usually reflects life very well. People don't make movies about Liverpool supporters. There was a recent movie made, obviously, about Annie and stuff like that. It was a beautiful piece following Hillsborough. But all of these firm movies are made, Danny Dyer, all that garbage about West Ham, Millwall, and Chelsea supporters. Headhunters. I don't know of any headhunters among Liverpool supporters, even legendary. I don't know of any of these huge characters, like Gary Oldman films. These were all films that were made about West Ham, Chelsea, Millwall supporters, to be quite honest with you. So I just think, if I'm being honest, people have selective memories when it comes to things that have happened. Yes, I know what happened to Heysel. Heysel, hang on, Phil. Heysel was a culmination. It was the icing that that it was the straw that broke the camel's back. But the build up into what happened to Heysel was again involving southern-based supporters who had travelled with England, and the authorities had just had enough, in my view.
But can we just come here? I want to bring it, because it's not that's a different era and it's a different thing, right? Like, people have short memories. Laura Duffy reminds us and rightfully points out, when you're trying to understand this heavy-handed nature, don't forget last year and before the final in Portugal, Chelsea and City fans are punching the head off each other. Chelsea and City fans are in the city punching the head off each other before the final and after the final, right? Madrid, Liverpool and Spurs fans are having a big sing-song and a hoolie, right?
Yeah.
There's the trope
the
that
day after.
scouts,
I never forget the day after, spending the day in one of the squares just off Plaza Mayor, and sitting around with various tables of Spurs fans over about a 4-hour period. And just having, and the camaraderie was unbelievable, you know, and it was being like that the whole way through those 4 days that I was in Madrid. I was apprehensive about Madrid because it was two English teams. I wasn't apprehensive about finding myself in trouble fighting with Spurs fans or getting caught up in a fight with Spurs fans. It was the thought that the police would move in to a scenario. And then you'd be caught up in that. And, you know, that's your fear. That is your fear as a Liverpool fan.
And this is where I'm going with it, because again, when we talk about the rival fans, right? So you've got three elements here, right? You've got the make you up world, which is social media. Social media is not reality, okay? Social media is a bizarre melting pot of mostly 99.9% shite, okay? And then there's 0.1% usage in events like this where you're able to have proper videos and it catches the authorities out on their lies, right? This is, in a very rare instances, this is where you're getting that 0.1% being effective, because everyone has videos and everyone can see what's going on, and clearly the story that's being spun is not the story, it's fake, right? So, next part. Then you've got these numerous accounts that want to say something outrageous for the nice likes and follows and favourites and stuff like that. And that's what it is. Look at the amount of supposed Everton fans out here happy to blame and believe everything that's being said against them. If that is the case, if the vast majority of Everton fans think that, then what's happened is that the goodwill and the good nature that Liverpool fans and Everton fans used to share is dead, it's gone, and it's not coming back, because if they're now pushing the line that's completely against what the city has stood for and completely against what has been going on, then it's a really sad day for Liverpool as a city, because there won't be the friendly rivalry. There won't be all the banter that goes on anymore. And it can't exist, because if you fully believe that Liverpool fans are the biggest bunch of hooligans to walk the earth and deserve to be stormed by the police in the way they've done, then you've missed what's gone on in your city for the best part of 30 years at this stage, right? So again, I come back to it. These people aren't real, right? These people aren't anything, okay? These people are just nameless accounts that could be anything with something 1878 in them, because that's what most of them are, right? Yeah. The United fans, the Arsenal fans, the Chelsea fans, like, they're just, all these people are just, if you meet the real people in the real world, you very rarely get these bizarre, outrageous comments being lobbed at you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't happen, because you wouldn't say it. You wouldn't say it to somebody on the street. So it's insane in terms of what's there. So I look again. This constant barrage of what's gone on over this is just, it's a disgusting thing. It's debased in terms of where it is. And what they forget, those fans, if they ever go to a foreign game or ever go to a European game or ever go to something else that's going on, remember, you aren't seen as an Everton fan. You aren't seen as a Chelsea fan. You aren't seen as a City fan. No. You're English.
You're an English troublemaker.
Yeah, you're an English troublemaker. They don't care what jersey you're wearing. No. They don't care what crest is on your jersey. They don't care what you look like, right? You're an English troublemaker. You're going to get tear gassed. You're going to get batting charged. And you're going to be seen as soon as you get a bit rowdy, a bit raucous in the pub, singing your songs, even if you are being harmless and being above board, they're going to come down you like a ton of bricks. And instead of being together as multiple fan bases, saving the reputation of what's there, keep ripping yourself apart. Because that's exactly what's going to keep continuing driving this behaviour towards the football fans. And again, I know I've sat here in this podcast and I've said many times, I don't buy into the small minority, because it happens too often, it happens too many times, right? It's now, the onus is now on the fan bases to clean those elements out of their fan base, to clean it up, because what Liverpool have done is they have done that. There is no history of trouble when they go away in Europe. There is no history of being bad away fans or being aggressive away fans in terms of what's there. We need the rest of the league to come along with us. And I think the onus is on the likes of Spirit of Shankly and stuff like that to drive an initiative like this, because if you don't, then every single English club supporter that goes away to Europe is going to be treated and manhandled in the exact same way. No matter what you think comes out of any investigation or legal action that's taken by the club, that is what's going to happen. And now we can stand up and we can bring this together and see if we can improve it for everyone. Because at this stage, there is so much issues that need to be addressed. And France needs to look towards their own thing. Look at that Saint-Etienne match. The crowd invasion, flares being lobbed into fans. They don't allow away fans to go to games because the trouble is too high. Like as I said, this is all the thing. But rival fans get their heads together.
Do you know what, right? Like it might seem insignificant in something, not insignificant, but you see that, and you see, you know, the flares being lobbed and whatnot. I seen someone light a flare and he made an absolute balls of it, and he burnt his hand by accident in the fan park, and I seen the damage that can be caused by those things. So the thoughts of standing in any kind of vicinity where 20 or 30 of them are being lobbed at you, and it is, at the end of the day, it's fire. And you know, I would imagine that some people have been, have suffered lifelong scars, physically and probably mentally out of that. And you know, and by the way, just to bring this back to the French police, we've seen this, and I think it feeds into their mentality now with football fans generally. We've seen some appalling scenes of French football matches this season, and French football matches having to be abandoned. And I think there's an element of us feeling fallen foul of that mentality from French police.
Dimitri Payet was struck by a flare in a Marseille game. I think it was Marseille-Nantes. Now, Phil will tell you, because he's as switched on as any of us, you go outside of Paris, you go to a place like Marseille, and you're talking about some of these places are ghettos. The French have huge, probably of all the European countries we can think of, huge problems with their minority communities, massive problems. And these places tend to be cauldrons of frustration. And what happened, it's very simple. What happened at the weekend is the outskirts of Paris, if anyone has ever been there on a regular basis, will tell you that the further outside of the centre of Paris, the more ethnic things get. And I'll speak on this. It's very, very simple. And what happens is they just pour in, and it's almost like, okay, we're going to have a little hoolie, and we're going to take from these foreigners. Rather than acknowledge something like that, the French would rather sweep it under the carpet and blame Johnny Foreigner. It's that simple. And you're right, Dicko. We've fallen foul of that because the last thing the French want is transparency, accountability, and to own up to any of their shortcomings. But when it comes to Le Pen canvassing in 4 years' time, she will speak on it, and she will get 45, maybe 50%, maybe more of the votes next time, because the right wing is on the rise for this issue. It's that simple. And that's why the Brits are united this morning and this afternoon saying we want an apology, because anybody who's anyone knows what's it.
I think to politicise it down to this level, I think there's some elements which is correct around what's on the issues that exist in the social fabric of France at the moment. But when it comes down to this is purely and simply about the French authorities trying to cover their arse. Okay. Yeah. And when it comes down, yes, there's the issues with as I said, there's going to be lots of little things that lead up to the reaction that goes on, but ultimately it's just about them covering their arse. That's the main piece that's happening here. So, but to finish this, because again, I wanted to go down deep here purely because this is our season end in a nutshell, right? However, the parade, we haven't talked about it, right? Because I wanted to finish with the parade, because I remember thinking about it on Saturday. I was going, that's going to be fucking awful, right? Why would you do that, right? Why would you? How the players they won't even turn up for it, right? There'll be like about 7 lads and that just wanted to be out and have a few drinks and just end up on a bus. And now half of Liverpool's in Paris anyway, right? And they're not going to get back in time to be standing out in the routes. There won't be as many people out as was there for the 17 people that turned up for the city's the city parade of their league trophy for their legends, right? And like, please don't do that. There's a super chat. Even Thiago's wife had issues getting into the stadium. She did, and she was tweeting about it as well. So there's a lot of big voices that are going out there in terms of hacking those. So hopefully it does. But anyway,
are you sure that's real? That looks like a fake super chat. Does that look like a real?
it's $10 Canadian from. Right, I'll take every Canadian dollar that somebody wants to throw at me, I'll move to Canada. If anybody's out there wants to bring me over, I'll host TSN Sports Centre. Right. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So the parade starts, and I am hanging because I had a 40th after the match on Saturday. And so, when you get those couple of hours to yourself and it just turned it on to have it on in the background. My God. Ray, can I ask you? As a man from the city, right?
Yeah.
Were you expecting, the turnout and the absolute outpouring of adulation for that team in the levels that you saw? Because that was bigger than to me, it seemed bigger than when we won the Champions League 3 years ago.
Yeah, I was expecting it. I really was, because people had made that mental commitment. People made travel arrangements from different parts of the UK. People, known people that had gone over from Ireland. People had made the commitment to go, and they were going to celebrate the team. I mean, the last parade I went to would have been 2006, which was when we won the FA Cup. Steven Gerrard. I actually wasn't living in Liverpool at the time. I was just actually home at the time, and we won that final, and that was celebrated. But what's happened over the last few years, and I think probably the reason why that parade was so well supported and well celebrated, I suppose a bit like the way that the numbers at the fan park grew as well, in a way, from Madrid to Paris, is because this now is a kind of a juggernaut in terms of the support behind the team. People, are smart enough to recognise that we went through such a bad period, on the pitch, and these players deserve all the adulation they're getting. And let's just not forget about throwing in the fact that we missed the biggest parade of what would have been our lifetimes in winning that Premier League trophy. So there was a bit of that. It was celebrating what this team is in the middle of, because I don't think people think it's the end. And just making sure that just because there was only 2 trophies on the front, that would be seen in any way as a failure. And let's not forget, if anyone else outside of, who knows how United will celebrate if they win an FA Cup now in the next year or two, after the stuff that they've been dishing out. But pretty much any club who wins a domestic trophy is going to go out and do a parade.
P, for me, and just before we go, another super chat from Agdi. Man, lashing out the Canadian dollars tonight. There must be a really good the exchange rate on at the moment. I watched the whole parade from Canada. That is Air Liverpool. You'll never walk alone. Go by yourself, Agdi. You're there watching the parade in Canada. You must have been up early to watch it, because it's a few hours behind us in terms of what's there. But Pete, is there a part of this? We talk about being cathartic, right? Everything that's happened, ultimately, we never had a parade. We never ever had a parade for that title win. I know they couldn't. There's a part of me, Ray. I wanted them to, when once they knew the crowd was there, right? Could they have not snuck the replica Premier League trophy out of the club?
I'll tell you, Phil, what it is.
And just sort of as they come towards the strand, just to have Klopp just starting to go din 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 din.
I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it is more than anything else. It's absolute and utter defiance from the Liverpool fan base. Liverpool fans are very astute people. They watch everything, they pay attention to everything, they know what's being said, they know who's saying it. They look at other people doing things that are probably less vocal and less begrudging. But what they do is they say, okay, we'll see you next week. And no matter what, whether it's the league trophy, whether it's just to celebrate what the women have done, the women's team have done, what we'll do is we'll take what you've done, Manchester City or whoever, and we will multiply it by 10, and we'll show you how it's really supposed to be done. It's absolute bloody-minded defiance. And that's what I enjoyed most about it. And I tell you, there's a couple of fan accounts that I follow from Manchester City, and all day they're just tweeting horrible things about Liverpool because we're absolutely locked in their head. They can't get their heads around it. They can't get their heads around. So obviously they're trying to negativize it, but they're tweeting about Liverpool all day. Because to be honest with you, nobody's interested in Manchester City. You made the point several times this season, Phil. And Shawnee makes the point, whenever City win the trophy, Arsenal fans, United fans, Chelsea fans celebrate. Why? Because they're of absolutely no significance to anyone. That kills them. It absolutely kills them because they know it. So it's just another chance for Liverpool supporters to show we'll be there, 700, 800, 900,000 of us, and we'll show you what we are. League Cup, FA Cup, and it kills people. And you see it all day, absolute boiling urine all day long. And it'll be tomorrow, it'll be the next day, and they'll be trying to mock us for winning 2 trophies and for having 1 million people on the streets. It kills them all, and
it's every fan base. It's not. I was talking about earlier around the tribalism about using historical events to bring Liverpool down. The parade, the mocking of the parade was by every single fan base. Yeah. Evertonians, yeah. United fans, Newcastle fans, Arsenal fans, Spurs fan, every fan base trying to mock the fact that we had a parade.
I think it's great that Calvin Harris was like. I actually have to say, right, of the whole thing that's on the parade, that's the maddest thing, and it's also imagine if you were Calvin Harris, right? How weird must it have been? I'm on the front of a bus, driving through the middle of Liverpool, just basically ramping out all the tunes for the lads. It's great crack. And then I was thinking to myself, right, it was great that the women's team had a bus. How many, though, Ray, in Liverpool knew that was the women's team and didn't just think it was the Wags bus that was going to come to the players?
I think it had been well publicised all week that the women were going to be on a bus. So I think
I was delighted. I was absolutely delighted that they did do that because it's great. No.
And I think also, I think it's gone to another level. Like the area where I'm from, West Derby, the pub there on Queen's Drive where they passed the Jolly Miller, like they made a big event out of it. I believe they had their own DJ. It was a festival atmosphere, and I would say that's become more so across the places along the route to try and just escalate this onto new levels. And I'll be honest, like now with what's happened, the combination of what's gone on in Paris, and the fact that I haven't been at a parade for so long, and there's been 2 epic parades. I think the next time we're in a Champions League final, which I believe will happen in the next few years, I think I'll make the decision to go to Liverpool next time, and hope that we've got a European Cup to parade.
As Gavs there sticks in, fair play to the club, including the women's team. That's what I said. It was brilliant to see it. And members of the Food Bank volunteers, that's absolutely fantastic. Tom also says, careful Phil, Bracky will be after you. You might be able to catch me. I'm so fast. I'd be like, okay, so look, that's been the show. Before we go, I just want to say we haven't talked about Sadio Mane leaving. Let's wait until that happens, right? Mm-hmm. We had enough to cover off tonight. There was no point to going into it. We've got many months ahead of us to talk absolute shite about transfers. I cannot wait for it. I won't be. Because on July the 2nd to July 17th, the World Games is taking place in Birmingham, Alabama. And we will spend most of our coverage on those Monday night shows will be all about the World Games. We didn't have enough time to cover off sports tonight, but we will. We'll be back next Monday to cover that off. Before we go, this show is brought to you in association with IP Vanish. IP Vanish achieves 4.6 stars out of 5 on the Google Trust pile, on the Trust pile. If you go to www.ipvanish.com/daytrippers, you get a good rate there, and that's for Gav because Gav wants to go to many trips and he needs all the money that comes in. And what does it do? It protects your people and it protects you. It protects your identity. You're able to pretend that you're not where you are, and the robbers and all the people on the internet that want to get you will be gone and they won't be able to find you and you'll be all grand. All right. And if you wanted to go and watch, say, another station from a different country that is possible. I'm told. I've heard about things like that, and there's other stuff as well. So you can Google all about VPNs, but in this instance, you want to do the ipvanish.com. Your only man for VPNs, right? And the last thing before I go, the Féileacáin's going on. Gav's got his golf thingamajig coming up soon. We want to raise. I think we're just over the 5k. We want to get to the 10k mark. So there's the link is in the description. Donate £1, donate €1, donate $1 Canadian. That's also a good one to do as well. If you're in America, donate $1 American dollar. If Bitcoins, they're probably worth about $1 now after the recent crash in crypto. You can donate a Bitcoin, so that's great as well. So yeah, look, all that, lash it on. But please support Féileacáin. It's an eminently supportable charity. It was a great call by Gav to do this. I'm in the middle of my training for the race in July, so I'm going to also be using the link, and I'm going to be coming after you all for sponsorship as well to help us get over this 10k mark, so that we have something really to celebrate across the course of the summer. That's been the Winners and Losers show tonight. Thank you to my friend who was in Paris, on the spot reporter Ray Dicko Dickinson. Watch your man there, he's bogey. Here's the best way to describe Andy Young telling you. And then across in the San Vicente jail in Colombia is, of course, Pete, who was allowed into the inmates' media room. But those bars, the prison warden will be down to take him off the bed now in a minute and give him a good scene. Anyway, that has been the show. That's been Winners and Losers. Thank you for everyone in the comments. Laura Duffy, I love all your comments. And Red Steve, I love you. And all the lads that come along and make my Monday nights a happy thing. I was asleep on the sofa and I just woke up and remembered, should I have to do this podcast? Without you lads, I wouldn't have the will or the gumption to come back every week. As they say in showbiz, baby, we'll be back next week. Gav, hit that stop button. I've finished talking. I've no more words to say at this point in time.
We're in showbiz, baby.